Testing.
If you're not here, raise your hand.
I think we're ready, Mr. President.
Well, thank you all for your patience. I think the mics here work.
They work here. Okay, we'll try again. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, March 7th, 2024. Prior to calling the meeting order, I'd like to ask members who are calling in by phone to identify themselves. Nope. Okay, as a reminder, if a member of this body is attending remotely, but not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. The meeting of the Regional Council is now called to order. I'd like to ask David Shapiro to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please stand, face the flag, place your right hand over your heart, and join together. I
pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Okay, we are holding this meeting in compliance with the Brown Act rules related to telephonic and video conference meetings. SCAG offices are open to members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment are provided in advance, and they are also included in the agenda packet. Just a reminder to reduce noise background. Please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. We'll now open the public comment period. of this meeting. This is a time for members of the public to offer comment for matters that are within the SCAG jurisdiction but not listed on the agenda. Staff have received any written comments after the deadline at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, March 6th.
No, we've received no such comments, Mr.
No
President.
comments. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak at this time? Okay, no one, okay. There's no need to prioritize or review the agenda at this time. Action item 1, approve the fiscal year 24-25 draft comprehensive budget. Do we have any members of the public to wish to speak on this item?
No public on speakers.
Nothing. I'll call on Cindy Geraldo, Chief Financial Officer, to present the item.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Cindy Geraldo, Chief Financial Officer. I am pleased to present our fiscal year 25 budget, which yesterday received the full support of our Executive Administration Committee. The proposed budget before you supports our agency goal to develop solutions for regional issues such as transportation, housing, and air quality, and complies with SCAG's primary responsibility to develop a sustainable community strategy, the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, the annual overall work program, and the transportation-related air quality plans. Table 1 of the staff report shows that the budget totals just under $377.5 million, 68 million down from the current fiscal year. Over 90% of this decrease is attributable to just 3 programs, which is the wind down of the MSRC last mile freight and REAP 2019 programs, and the reduction of REAP 2021 available funds based on the forecasted expenditures in the current fiscal year. Note that we have assumed in our budget that there will be no reduction in REAP 2021 funds. Once there is a final resolution on the state budget, staff will return to the board to review and approve any needed modifications to the REAP 2021 program. So with that, the largest component of our budget is the overall work program, which totals just under $370 million. It's spread across 34 different programs. The 2 largest programs currently are REAP 2021, which totals $203 million, and the MSRC Last Mile Freight Program, which is predominantly funded with local match funds and totals $87.5 million. In January, staff met with Caltrans, FHWA, and FTA to review our work program and our accomplishments and on our major programs. And Ms. Jepson did a great job of presenting that work. And we're very happy to report that the feedback we received from those agencies is supportive of the work program before you. Within the staff report on page 15 of the agenda packet, a chart has been provided that details the total program for each budget. And within the comprehensive budget document, starting on page, I think it's 44 or 49, excuse me, you can find narratives of each program that describe the program's objectives and the alignment with our strategic plan. There is a new funding source within our OWP, which is the Carbon Reduction Program. After discussion with key stakeholders and consistent with the regional council direction, 35% of the local CRP funds is set aside for SCAG, while 65% is made available through a call for projects process. The OWP before you includes the use of nearly 8.8 million of SCAG CRP funds for 11 different projects, all aimed at reducing carbon dioxide emissions from on-road transportation sources. These projects are detailed for you on table 3 of the staff report. Major expenditure categories of the budget are broken out in table 2. And these include salaries and benefits, which totals 47.4 million. Cash and in-kind commitments of 81 million, which almost entirely relates to the last mile freight program, and consultant and technical assistance and pass-through payments totaling 227 million, of which 85% or 191 million is REAP 2021. As mentioned, our total salaries and benefit costs amount to 47.4 million, which is less than a 3% increase over the current year. The small increase can be predominantly attributed to our annual merit program, to an increase in our unfunded pension liability payment, and increasing benefit costs, offset by the net elimination of 2 positions, taking our total agency headcount from 237 to 235. Attachment 2 of the staff report provides details of the 6 position changes incorporated in the proposed budget, which nets to a savings of $559,000. In addition, 2 new IT position classifications have been added to our salary schedule in order to allow for more leadership and specialized support. No budget impact is related to these 2 new classifications, as funding for these has not been included in the proposed budget. 1 new employee benefit is proposed within the budget, which is the addition of Veterans Day as a recognized non-work holiday. While the addition of an additional holiday does not impact our total salary and benefits budget, we estimate the cost of 1 day of labor at about $237,000. With the inclusion of Veterans Day, there will be 10 staff holidays in addition to the 44 personal floating holidays. Finally, the general fund budget totals just over $3 million. The general fund provides funding for our regional council and its subcommittees, stipends and travel, the General Assembly, and other expenditures which may not be grant eligible. The general fund is predominantly funded with membership dues, which total $2.7 million. The detailed breakdown of those membership dues by agency is provided on page 85 of the agenda packet. These dues were calculated taking into account the funding needs of the general fund and inflationary factors in compliance with the methods of assessment outlined in SCAG's bylaws. With that, staff recommends that the RC move to support the draft comprehensive budget in the amount of $377 million, including the general fund budget and a membership assessment schedule, which will be transmitted to the General Assembly, and authorize the release of the budget documents to begin the 30-day public comment period. And staff looks forward to returning for final approval in May. Thank you.
Mr. Your mic.
Mike. Thank you, Cindy. Now entertain comments from members of the RC. As a reminder, member of the body is attending remotely but not located at the specified location on the agenda. They may observe but not participate in any discussion or voting of this body. Do you have any members present who have any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Just a clarification, can you review we added,
Your mic.
it's on, okay. Can you review the holidays again? We added Veterans Day.
And that'll make it to a total 10
Okay,
paid holidays. You want me to list the 10? So
sure.
I'm going to lean on my HR director who's close by, but I believe I should know all of these since I benefit from them. But we have Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Memorial's Day. What's the other one? Labor Day.
Martin Luther King.
They're all
4th of
listed in the staff
July.
report. actually.
I was trying to
Thank you.
find it, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's at the top of,
It's right here.
But I was trying
It's
to
on
find
page
it.
21 of the packet.
and it's at
Thank
the
you.
top of the page.
Thank you.
Thank
Look
you.
at all my help. January 1st, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Thank you so much.
And I guess the second part of my question, which is the more important part, 44 personal floating holidays, so is that? how does-
44 hours.
Oh, I heard you say days.
I apologize.
Did anybody else hear days? Thank you. I go, oh my gosh, I'm working in the wrong place.
Yes. 44 hours.
Thank you. Somebody else heard days.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes. Get that. Let's make sure that's straight in the record.
Shapiro.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the report. And I won't re-ask the questions I asked yesterday. You answered them thoroughly. Just want to confirm, and I'm fully supportive of the Veterans Day holiday and those who serve our great country. But what was the amount you indicated in staff time or hours?
137,000.
That's what I thought. Okay. I heard that yesterday, then I thought I heard a different number. Must be the mics. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Margaret,
Yes, I need a clarification. I thought someone said that the
Mike.
governor,
Mike,
It's on.
Pretty closer.
You have to talk into it.
I thought somebody said that the governor in his budget took away the housing trust funds, some of the housing trust fund for the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. And I thought you said there was nothing taken away from REAP. They said that came out of REAP or something, and I'm totally confused.
It is a little bit confusing.
Yeah, first of all, if you're not speaking, you might want to turn your mics off because it's affecting how the mics work. When mics are on, yours is on too. All right, thank you. Yes, indeed, the governor did propose to cut half of the REAP money. It's not state law yet, so it's a governor's proposal. We're anticipating how we react to that. It hasn't changed the contract between us and the state at this point, so we really don't have any authority to do anything different than what's reflected in the budget.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just, I know we're all dealing with this, if we're on multiple boards. Is this budget factor in us as stipend or employees coming up this next year? And do you have enough reserve in that budget for if we end up going to employee status? Because I know it's going to cost the agency more.
We have the budget, and if
Either
we
way.
do make that transition, either way, but you're still stipend non-W-2 employees as of this point, and if that were to change, we'll be coming back to the board with that.
And that's going to be, Ruben's going to need more money because he has all the potential liability for us driving as employees to and from this meeting now. And who else, what other things we're doing. So we're going to need a bigger legal department. But when it's appropriate, Mr. President, I'll move this and the consent item to make the voting easy after you do public comments.
Thank you. Any other questions inside? Any questions from CSC? Trish Kelly?
Hi, Wendy.
Wendy?
I have
Wendy,
questions.
go ahead.
Just comments really quick. We did bring this up on the budget last about how this would affect our staffing levels. And I absolutely support the budget. So this is not a comment about that. I just want to I'm just concerned about any permanent or temporary staff that have been hired to perform REAP-related activities. And also with the many agencies that are relying on the REAP funding to conduct these critical programs. I want to make sure that we as an agency provide them with as much advance notice of this agency's strategies as we can. I know the staff has immediately notified entities that we're expecting to receive REAP 2.0 grant funding of that statewide halt on REAP related activities, but and basically pending resolution of that state budget. So can you share with us any key responses or recommendations that you've heard from the stakeholders that we should be aware of, and any additional actions that SCAG staff is pursuing to address any identified concerns? So that's everything. That's a lot.
Thank you for that. Yes, like I said earlier on, we are aware of the governor's proposal to cut half the REAP money. It will have serious implications for the REAP program. So that was why we put a stop notice out so that we're not expending resources we don't have. However, we have over the next couple of months work to do with both the legislature and the governor's office on where the REAP program ends. I think it's safe to imagine that there might be a potential that we will not have all the REAP monies available to us. But the REAP program was really set up to be a multi-year program anyway. So what's left will still be with us for a few more months than just 1 year. So there's still a multi-year dimension to it. So there is enough work with staff on the SCAG side to get work done. And there's also more work besides the REAP program that staff is also transitioning into. And so we're managing that internally. What we're also trying to do is develop an advocacy system process allows us to reimagine how REAP might be funded, because quite frankly, the way we set up the REAP program in our region was intended to be a more sustained program over time as opposed to a one-time program, such that we're supporting housing production in the region. And so we are looking at ways to continue to propagate that. Our hope is to come back to the Regional Council in April with some principles that will then hopefully inform how we might approach what's left of the REAP program, and then hopefully get back to working with our stakeholders on how we effect what's left of the program and how the program might be operated or executed over multiple years if that becomes an option for us in the budget.
Anything else? Okay. Do we have any other speakers?
Frank Navarro.
Frank Navarro. Frank Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second the motion by Supervisor Hagman, and I want to thank staff for their tremendous work on this budget. I know that with the diminishing funding that's coming from the state and the feds, it's a tough road to toe. But I do want to compliment the staff and Mr. Comey on the work done on this budget. And again, I second the motion by Supervisor Hagman.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
No, Mr. President.
That's it? Okay. First, I'll ask for public comment on the consent calendar. Any public comment?
No raised hands.
Have anybody in the room or on Zoom wishing to make a comment or a question? None? Ask for a roll call vote on items 1 and 2.
Mr. President, I just want to confirm that the second originally was made, I believe, by Member Shapiro.
Yes, it was. Yes. So he'd be the one that's on the agenda.
May I ask the supervisor if we're saying items 1 and 2, I wonder, are we doing 1 in the consent calendar?
Consent calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
One and done.
Okay.
She's right next to me. She's able to hear me, but
The clarification was that the motion includes the entire consent calendar and item
Yes.
number 1.
yes.
Thank you.
I will proceed with the roll call, Mr. President. Damon Alexander. Cindy Allen.
Aye.
Valeria Mesqua. Adele Andrade Stadler.
Yes.
Elizabeth Becerra.
Aye.
Gary Boyer. Gary Boyer. Drew Boyles.
Yes.
Art Brown.
Aye.
Wendy Bucknam.
Aye.
Margaret Clark.
Aye.
Jenny Crosswhite.
Yes.
Rick Dennison.
Dennison, yes.
John Dimitru.
Dimitri, yes.
Keith Ike.
Ike, yes.
Margaret Finley. Margaret
Yes.
Finley.
Yes.
Thank you. Claudia Frometa. James Gaisley.
Aye.
Marshall Goodman.
Aye.
Kurt Hagman.
Aye.
Jan Harnick.
Yes.
Mark Henderson.
Yes.
Laura Hernandez.
Yes.
Mike Judge.
Yes.
Joe Kalmick. Joe Kalmick.
Give me a large
Trish
time.
Kelly.
Thanks.
Trish Kelly. yes.
Sorry,
Barbecue chips?
just want to confirm that Joe Kelly was a yes. Sorry, Joe Kalmick. Kathleen Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. Tammy Kim.
Yes.
Lauren Clayman. Lauren Clayman. Linda Krupa.
Yes.
Carlos Leon.
Yes.
Vianney Lopez.
Yes.
Clint Lorimore.
Aye.
Ken Mann.
Ken Man, yes.
Steve Manos.
Aye.
Ray Marquez.
Yes.
Andrew Maciel.
Yes.
Larry McCallan.
Yes.
Casey McKeon.
Yes.
Lauren Meister.
Yes.
Dennis Michael. Dennis Michael. Maria Nava Frolic.
Yes.
Frank Navarro.
Yes.
Oscar Ortiz.
Yes.
Luis Blancarte. Luis Blancarte. Gil Rebollar.
Yes.
Rocky Rhodes.
Yes.
Deborah Robertson. Celeste Rodriguez.
Supervisor Blancarte, if you could turn off your mic in your room, we see you, and then the clerk will call your vote when she's finished. Thank you.
Celeste Rodriguez. Ali Saleh.
Saleh is a yes.
Tim Sandoval. Andrew Sorega. Zach Schwank. Zach Schwank. David Shapiro.
Yes.
Marty Siminoff.
Yes.
Jose Luis Solache.
Yes.
Hilda Solis.
Yes.
Karen Spiegel. Donald Wagner.
Aye.
Alan Wapner.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Jeff Wood.
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama.
Yes.
And I will go back to Luis Blancarte.
We note the thumbs up.
Okay, we will note a thumbs up. Thank you.
Dennis
Mr.
Michael is a
President.
yes.
Thank you. Mr. President, the motion for item 1 in the consent calendar passes with 50 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you. Now go to information item 11, presidential priorities panel on goods movement. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on item 11?
No raised hands.
Okay, now call on Comey Achizi, Executive Director, to introduce the panel of speakers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask the panel members to come up to the front as our honorable officers take their seat in the reserved space. Come on up here, this way. All right, sir. Yes, it's all good. All right. Well, thank you. Again, thank you, Mr. President, and everyone involved in developing our EAC strategic work plan, because that's really the basis of this conversation today. We have had 2 informative panels on clean transportation technology and also on transit rail recovery. And today we have a 3rd panel focusing on goods movement. Special thanks to our panelists for taking the time to talk to us today. We all know that our region is nearly half the state's population, and it generates almost $1.5 trillion in regional gross domestic product, ranking as the 15th largest economy in the world if you were a country by itself. This region represents the largest goods movement area in the US when factoring in for the combined seaports, railroads, air cargo, interstates, highways, local road access, trucking services, the border crossings, an industrial footprint with nearly 2 billion square feet of inventory. Since Connect SoCal 2020, that was approved in April of 2020, our freight system infrastructure has been stretched by increasing supply chain complexity, by rapidly changing technology and evolving trends. This include most notably the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen some geopolitical tensions that have impacted global trade. We've seen inflation, We've also seen state regulations towards clean technology that affect the goods movement industry. And of course, there's e-commerce and the increasing expectation of delivery with all of you that have Amazon Prime. Amid these changes, we were proactive in leading collaboration with key regional and state and federal partners, which culminated in the goods movement resolution that was approved by this regional council about a year ago, in March of 2023. Now, principles from that goods movement resolution that the regional council approved have been incorporated in the regional planning policies in Connect SoCal, the draft Connect SoCal 2024. These align with the plan's visions, goals, and also informs the development of the plan's goods movement approach and implementation strategies. So additionally, SCAG's research and programs have been instrumental in supporting the regional planning efforts, including the last mile freight program, the Zero Emission Truck Infrastructure Study, also known as ZETI, the Goods Movement Communities Opportunity Assessment, the Integrated Passenger and Freight Rail Forecast, the Last Mile Freight Delivery Study, and the Industrial Warehouse Study. This year, SCAG plans to complete the Zero Emission Truck Infrastructure Study, the ZETI study, as well as multiple curb space management studies. This is just to give you a sense of the work that's going on and will continue to go on with regards to the goods movement space here at SCAG. We will continue managing the last mile freight program and enhance supply chain assessment platforms, tools, and resources for the region. As we think about these things and these challenges that face this prime industry in the SCAG region, we're developing an approach to also focus on a comprehensive sustainable freight plan that will inform the next Connect SoCal update and hopefully support numerous funding programs and opportunities and key initiatives related to goods movement. We will have a Q&A session here. The intent of this conversation today is really to bring some experts to the table to prime the conversation and hopefully open it up for Q&A for board members to be able to maybe hopefully address some questions that you might have. So this conversation is first of many, and as we proceed with the comprehensive freight program, a freight plan, there will be more opportunities to hear from experts and dialogue with those who are key stakeholders in the goods movement industry. So with that, let me introduce our august panel. We have Lena Kent, who is the General Director of Public Affairs at BNSF Railroad. I'm not going to go through their bios. They will do some self-introduction by their opening statements. And of course, anymore these days, you can see everybody's bios on LinkedIn. We have Russ Lane. Russ is the Government Affairs Leader for the Arizona-California Railroad Company. I just found out, just fact here, Arizona-California Railroad is on California Avenue in Arizona. Just one of those stupid facts I keep in my head. We also have Salim Yusuf Zadeh. He's the Chief Executive Officer at Watt EV, and they're a company that that works on clean vehicles in the freight space. Joining us online will be Stephanie Fosso. She's the Director of Fleet Technology and Electrification for the Cisco Corporation. Both Watt EV and Cisco are part of our last mile freight program. So we work with them on trying to get electrification between the infrastructure provider, the vehicle provider, as well as a fleet owner. So you should see some interplay on that as a result. So would you please, I'm going to start with Lena, if you would introduce yourselves and tell us about your role in your company, what you all do, and especially how this conforms with goods movement activities in Southern California.
Great. Thank you, Comey. Hi, I'm Lena Kent. I'm the General Director of Public Affairs for BNSF Railway. I am proud to say that I've been with BNSF for 28 years now, based here in Southern California. I'm a lifelong resident of California and grew up in the Inland Empire, and where I currently am still today. BNSF is located in Fort Worth, Texas. We operate in 28 states and 3 Canadian provinces. moving many of the goods that you all depend on day in and day out. We have major facilities in San Bernardino, Los Angeles. We have a facility in San Diego, and also are a major transporter of goods arriving and departing from the ports of LA and Long Beach. A little fun fact to hopefully replace Comey's fun fact about where your company is located. During the holiday season, we transported 75 million packages on time. So all of those packages that you're relying on, that you are online ordering, we help get those to your homes. So I'm happy to be here today and happy to be here with my colleagues to discuss transportation here in Southern California.
Ross?
All right, testing. All right, well, thank you for having me. I'm Ross Lane. I work for Genesee in Wyoming, which you've probably never heard of, but we're a short line railroad holding company. We have over 100 railroads, small railroads across North America, and we also have operations in the UK and Europe. A short line railroad, for those who I may be telling for the first time, or a reminder for those who already know, it's defined by the Surface Transportation Board in terms of overall revenue. So the large BNSF and Union Pacific, which you're familiar with in California, way on down the list are short line railroads that revenue of under $50 million per year, again, defined by the Surface Transportation Board. G&W operates 6 short line railroads in California, all the way to San Diego Imperial Valley, which connects down at the border in Tijuana, up into Ventura County, where we serve the Port of Hueneme, the San Joaquin Valley Railroad, the California Northern Railroad, and then up at the Oregon border, the Central Oregon and Pacific Railroad. Short line railroads in California move the equivalent freight of about 5 million semi-truckloads. We're the first mile, last mile delivery, and we're really that nexus for a shipper, large or small, that wants to connect to the national freight rail network and then on to the domestic or international supply chain. So I handle government affairs for our western states, everything from Texas, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and everything west. And we're happy to be here. The Arizona and California Railroad is the only railroad in the SCAG district that G&W operates, where we interchange with BNSF in Cadiz, California, and then take freight into the Phoenix metro area. We really mimic I-10, and we become very familiar with SCAG as we're working with Caltrans and BNSF on a project that would rehabilitate that line and essentially add some more capacity and an additional lane to that Phoenix metro area. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Salim Yousafzadeh, the CEO of WADEV. We're a company that was founded in August 2020, so we've been around for several years now with headquarters in Long Beach. And the mission of the company has always been to accelerate the transition to heavy-duty trucking. So the way we go about doing that is to really have a full ecosystem level approach and solution to making electrification as simple as possible. What that means is that we have multiple divisions, one of which is on the infrastructure side. So WADEV is building out public charging infrastructure. Starting point has been all along the California West Coast. We have one site that's currently operational in the Port of Long Beach with 5 megawatts of capacity, 13 dual core chargers, ability to charge 26 trucks at once. And that's just the first phase. The next phase of that will be adding an additional 7 megawatts there to scale it up. The other sites that we have include San Bernardino, Gardena, and Bakersfield, all of which are set to come online in the next 2 months. San Bernardino and Gardena were the benefit of the SCAG Last Mile Freight Program grant, so very grateful to have you guys here and for us to be here as well and be a part of that. But WADEV, in addition to the sites that we're focused on in Southern California, we've got about 15 sites that cover almost all of the West Coast, going from the Port of San Diego all the way up to Seattle, Washington. And we have site control over those grant funds already tied up through CFI or CEC programs or other California funds. And then separate from the infrastructure, we focus on a technology base that's really focused on pushing the technology beyond the current capabilities to add megawatt charging. So you could go beyond the drayage and middle mile segment and eventually transition to long haul trucking. Beyond infrastructure and technology, though, we also have our transportation division. We knew very quickly that we can't just have infrastructure built out and have it just sitting there without any utilization. That's when we started working with a lot of the truck manufacturers, testing the capabilities of those vehicles, creating our own transport company so they could start moving freight for shippers. So those conversations happen with the shippers that have the sustainability goals. In the past 2 years, among the 20 trucks that we have, we've moved probably over 600,000 miles using zero emissions trucks for Procter & Gamble and some of the others from the middle mile segment, as well as the drayage portions. And that's allowed us to really, figure out what these trucks are capable of. There are obviously different constraints and variabilities that are very different from diesel trucks. And this allows us to create the best solution to owner operators. As you know, owner operators make up a large portion of the industry. About 70% of the transportation industry is made up of owner operators. These are smaller carriers that can't necessarily afford a $500,000 truck or afford to build infrastructure at their facilities. So our solution to them is our truck as a service solution, where we give access to them and an all-inclusive lease of the vehicle, maintenance, damage insurance, and charging at a fixed price per month on routes that we've tested, so we can give them the best solution. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Alan. I have to apologize to Stefan. I have an extra E in my notes that made it sound like Stephanie, but it's Stefan. Stefan Foso, you're online?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see
All
you.
right. Oh, excellent. Yeah, I have that all the time. People call me Stephanie, so that's fine. It's French, so by the way. All right. Well, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Stefan Fosso. I'm Director of Fleet Technology and Electrification with Cisco Corporation. So Cisco Corporation is the largest food distribution in North America. We serve more than 300,000 customers, and most of our customers are, local restaurants, schools, cafeteria, casino, hospital. So anywhere you go to a restaurant, people, and you order food, the food probably come from a Cisco warehouse. In California, we operate 7 distribution centers just for what we call the last mile delivery. So we have Los Angeles, San Diego, Central California by Modesto, Fremont, San Francisco, Sacramento, Ventura, and Riverside. So the Riverside is what is one of our pilot sites. That's where this partnership with SCAG came to fruition. So we operate about 10,000 trucks daily in North America and 10,000 trailers. So Cisco is one of the largest fleet in North America when it comes to heavy duty transportation. So we have a major impact on what we call emissions. And our goal is to reduce our emission footprint by 27.5% by 2030. So if you convert that to the total of our fleet, so we have an ambitious goal to replace our diesel tractors with electric vehicle. And right now we're running numbers about 2,800 Class 8 tractors to be electrified by 2030. So happy to be here with you. I can share more about the program that we're running in Riverside as part of the last mile delivery program, but happy to be here now. Thank you again for the time.
Thanks, Stefan. So I will ask a couple of questions, and I will look around the room and online to our board members to see if you have questions for the panel. My first question, and this is really, it's a jump ball situation. Anybody can go after it. From your perspective, and having been engaged on the public and private side of this issue of goods movement, and especially as we move towards clean technology on the goods movement side with the objective of emissions reduction, what are some examples of areas where improvement is needed in that collaboration between the public and the private, and what can agencies like SCAG offer in making that process better, assuming that these are all objectives that you're also collaterally aligned with?
I can go ahead and start with that question.
Sure.
So I would first add that, we believe that rail is the most environmentally friendly way to move goods over land. We can move a ton of freight, 500 miles on a single gallon of diesel fuel. which if the average SUV were as fuel efficient as a locomotive, it would get 250 miles to the gallon. Each one of our intermodal trains takes about 400 trucks off of the highway. And when you consider the number of trains that we run through Southern California, that is a significant reduction that is moving by rail versus on our highways. So BNSF, for some of you may have heard, BNSF has acquired about 4,600 acres in Barstow, California, where we had planned to build, or where we do plan to build, a facility that is unlike anything else in California or the United States, if not the entire world. This facility would be a location where we would be able to, we would build the warehouses on site of where the intermodal facility is. So containers arriving from the ports of LA and Long Beach or departing would be moved a short distance to our Barstow facility by train. They would not go by highway, and where they would arrive at that location and they would be transloaded. So the contents of those boxes would be taken out at the on-site warehouse, reshuffled, brought right back to the rail yard, confined within that footprint, where they would be loaded onto rail and taken out of California via our rail system. So this obviously reduces a number of trucks on Southern California freeways. It will, we believe, reduce a number of vehicle miles traveled for cars that are traveling from the high desert to the Inland Empire for work. And at the same time, we'll create over 20,000 direct and indirect jobs. So it's a significant project. I will tell you, BNSF has invested in a number of technologies. We believe in sustainability. We believe in operating as clean as possible, but there are certainly a lot of challenges associated with that. We have committed to use zero emission hostlers at that facility, install solar panels on the rooftops, do as much electric zero emission technologies as we possibly can. There is a challenge though with the electric locomotives. We are just not at a point where we believe we can implement that technology, because we can't even get a prototype until 2027. I would say that CARB's in-use locomotive rule, for those of you that are familiar with it, is going to have a significant impact on our ability to serve this region. For those of you who may not be aware, the rule requires us to put about $800 million per year, both Union Pacific and BNSF, into an account. I don't know how many of you understand the complexities of $800 million, but it literally will prevent us from investing in California, and it will prevent us from investing in the Barstow International Gateway project. I think my colleague Ross may also agree that it's going to be very difficult for many of the short lines in California to still stay in business. So we see a modal shift from trucks, or from trains to trucks, further congesting our freeways. So I would say, if there's opportunities to work together, I need all of you to please take a look at that in-use locomotive rule and engage on that front, and understand that this isn't just a regulatory issue. This is a transportation issue that's going to have dire consequences on all of us here in Southern California. It's CARB's in-use locomotive rule. The EPA is considering a waiver to allow CARB to implement that rule, and comments are due April 22nd.
Okay, so I know how you feel, Lena. Russ, what do you think?
Ditto to that. I do government affairs for a living, and oftentimes you deliver bad or interesting news to lawmakers and talk about how this thing will be bad for your business. That's always true, but in this case, this is existential. The CARB in-use locomotive regulation to many short lines in the state. They will simply go out of business because they can't afford to comply with the regulation. I don't want to leave it on a sour note. I think there are lots of opportunities to partner with public agencies, with railroads, with shippers and others, to find innovative ways to move freight. Short lines in particular have a lot of deferred maintenance needs. That's just we inherited largely from the larger railroads over the last 50 years or so. One of the projects that we're working on now, as I mentioned, is upgrading our line between California and Arizona, Well, why does that matter? What happens in the Mojave Desert to this region and to this city in particular? A lot of the benefits that we model have benefits directly to the port. It's all about reducing VMT, reducing truck traffic. As Lena mentioned, there's just real inherent physics benefits to moving freight by rail. I can't remember what the statistic is, but at any given time, there's about this much of a steel wheel on steel rail. That's all the resistance that train is overcoming. While the technology has changed quite a bit since that was invented, the simple physics still exist. Do we need to electrify our network to remain competitive in our markets? Not necessarily, but the public is demanding it. And I think we will get there, but it's going to be on a different timeline. And I point to these screens on that are all behind us and in front of us. 20 years ago, that big screen TV cost $10,000. And now they give one to you at Walmart if you shop there on Christmas Eve. As a short line railroad, we're never going to be the first movers. We depend on larger class ones to cascade down their equipment that we buy at a significant discount and then use their equipment. If the public is to see benefits, and we believe that there are from zero emissions technologies, from upgrading rail infrastructure, then there has to be partnership. There are grant programs out there at the federal level. Those have been great, but there has been pretty minimal grant programs from the state outside of the locomotive space for upgrading our infrastructure. A lot of times that's because it's not the sexiest project that you can imagine, putting in new rail ties, installing new rail. But when you can go from 10 miles per hour to 25 to 40 miles per hour, you've effectively doubled your capacity as a railroad. So I could go on about the different areas for partnership, but there are some exciting opportunities around the horizon. But to Lena's point, we have to stay in business to realize those exciting opportunities. And that's our number one focus right now, is making sure that we can do that.
But before I go to Salim on the public-private partnership and benefits of it, could you, Lena, kind of just give us like a few sentences of what exactly does the in-use locomotive rule intend? We know that it's existential and, it requires you to put $800 million up, but what exactly is CARB trying to get done, just for the benefit of folks that may not be familiar with the in-use rule?
Sure. So CARB has a well-intentioned, rule to help reduce emissions. And we believe that reducing emissions is the right thing to do. We just have to do it in a way that, as Ross said, doesn't put us all out of business. So CARB has passed a rule that would require no locomotive to operate in the state that is older than 23 years old. Well, that seems like a long time. It seems like an old locomotive, but locomotives are remanufactured into cleaner locomotives. But this rule would not allow us to operate a locomotive, even if it's been remanufactured, if it's older than 23 years old. I think it's important to emphasize that 66% of both Union Pacific and BNSF locomotives are within that category. So they would no longer be able to operate in the state. They've also indicated that we have to acquire electric locomotives starting in 2035. We talked about grants and possibilities for grants. Well, I will tell you that BNSF has had to give back grant money because we were not able to meet the obligations, because the manufacturers were not able to produce an electric locomotive that met the perimeters of those grants. So right now we've been told we can't even get an electric locomotive to test until 2027, and we need some significant time to test out that equipment. We also need the needed infrastructure in order to charge the locomotives. Electric locomotives, as you could imagine, would take a significantly longer time to charge. So we would need more than just one locomotive to replace one locomotive. At Barstow, I believe our existing facility uses 1 megawatt of electricity. The new Barstow facility would use 66 megawatts of electricity, and that's not including charging any type of electric locomotives. We were told by the power company that would be about a 7 to 10 year endeavor to try to just get the needed infrastructure to charge the facility for electric hostlers and hybrid electric cranes. So we have been able to expedite that time frame, but certainly there's a lot of constraints in terms of charging locomotives. If we're not able to meet those obligations, or even right now, since we don't have electric locomotives, the state is requiring BNSF and Union Pacific to each put about $800 million a year into a fund that is not usable to us, but yet it significantly hurts projects that would reduce emissions in the basin and in the high desert sooner rather than later.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be other questions that will come at you on that. Salim, you want to talk a little bit about public-private partnerships and
Sure.
and maybe a little more on what the last mile freight program may have been to you as a private enterprise.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so a little bit about the last mile freight project that we did specifically with SCAG. It was to have the build out of our San Bernardino location as well as our Gardena location. This would be a total of about 10 megawatts of power between the two sites, as well as to fund 20 trucks, a combination of Volvo, Nikola, or some of the other manufacturers, and to operate them within the Inland Empire area. This is obviously just one of the scope beyond, what we're already doing with the Long Beach site and having trucks moving out between the middle mile. Those two sites, San Bernardino and Gardena, are just at the final stages of coming online. Just to give you a timeline of the construction process of all of our sites, Long Beach was actually the last of those 4 sites to go into development. We got the site control over that a little over 2 years ago, and it took about 14 months from when we had site control to when we had the site completely operational, which is pretty quick timing considering some of the other sites. San Bernardino, on the other hand, has been in construction for a little over 2 years, and we're finally at the tail end of that. So there's obviously, a lot of differences between some of the sites that we have. Long Beach was one that was already, paved, graded, and ready to go. It just needed a lot of electrical work and underground work. Bakersfield is on the extreme end. This is a site that's 115 acres, which was completely underdeveloped. It was a greenfield site, needed a lot of grading, and 100 acres of that is dedicated all to solar. So it's a lot more to manage, a lot more permitting aspects that are involved, and a lot more dealing with the utilities. Utilities are also, play a huge role. I mean, some of our sites, we completely depend on the utility where we're not doing distributed energy resources. And it's a big ask. Long Beach, we requested 5 megawatts. Fortunately, there is power already available to us there. You'll come across sites that don't have power, and upgrading those lines can take several years, putting you behind timelines. So being able to have that level of transparency with utilities to see exactly where they are in that timeline and work with them to figure out which properties may have power is crucial for our business. But beyond that, infrastructure isn't the issue. I mean, it does take a fair amount of capital that we put into it, which fortunately we're able to tap into some grant funding as well as a significant amount of match funding to do it to build it out. But the trucks have been more of a bottleneck to us. Trucks, they have gone through many recalls. A lot of the legacy OEMs, it sort of eats into their traditional business model selling diesel trucks. So it's almost in their benefit to prolong, manufacturing electric trucks, because ultimately it'll eat into their own legacy business. The newer manufacturers that are strictly electric don't necessarily have those bottlenecks of a legacy OEM, but they still run into issues with battery manufacturers and manufacturing processes. The other side of that is that the port has 25,000 trucks registered to move in and out of the Port of LA and Long Beach. At the beginning of this year, the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule was supposed to go into effect, which would encourage carriers to start migrating over to zero emissions trucks, but that got delayed. So we have, a site in Long Beach that could potentially charge significantly more vehicles besides the ones that we're charging today, but because we don't have the waiver for ACF, it's sort of being prolonged. So that's one area where we really want to see that waiver go into motion from the EPA to really have those owner operators start migrating and start getting electric trucks. And we have worked very closely with all of those manufacturers to make sure that the trucks are available. We ourselves have significant amount of orders with a number of the manufacturers to be able to get those trucks and put them into our own transport fleet, as well as to have them available to owner operators through our truck as a service platform. Yeah, I mean, beyond that, on the technology side, we're also working significantly through our charging manufacturers. We've got created a subsidiary company called Charge America, which is supposed to help develop the state of technology on charging equipment. So when you look at what exists today and what goes into the ground on charging, typically on a site, you'll have power come in at low voltage. So that's around 480 volts, three phase. It goes through a transformer and then goes through a switch gear. And then you have a ton of underground conduits cabling that goes to your power cabinets and to your dispensers. That's makes up a huge amount of the cost and the infrastructure that goes in the ground. And then also when you look at the time for charging, it takes about 2 to 3 hours with a CCS connector, which is the connector that you see on most vehicles today, excluding Teslas. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to charge an electric truck. Compare that to a diesel fueling time of about 30 to 45 minutes. So when you're looking at scaling up, we're able to find solutions and find routes that work for the trucks that exist today, given their constraints of charge time, weight, limited range, and be able to manage that. But
Yeah.
what we see as crucial to going towards the long haul is faster charging. And that's where megawatt charging comes in. It's a different type of cable, different connector, different cooling levels. So a lot of things change. But we're leading that effort to have technology available that has both CCS and MCS through our second generation product that will be installed at all of our stations moving forward. And then we're also working on a third generation that comes in at medium voltage, removing a lot of the hardware that you see on site. So it'll come directly at medium voltage to a power cabinet, not needing any more transformer or switchgear because it's all built in. And that'll reduce a lot of the load for the utilities, a lot of the cost, and accelerate the timeline to get sites operational.
Thanks, Alan. I want to go to Stefan, and I'm going to switch up the question here because I think we've heard about interaction, the public-private interaction, but with what Salim just talked about in the constraints of getting that equipment and your interest in being meeting this obligation of reducing by 27% your emissions. Are you focused solely on battery electric, or are you also looking at hydrogen? How does that play into your interaction? And if you could also talk about, where the public-private connection might be of help to you in your objectives.
Sure. When Cisco had a science-based event where we decided what impact we want to make on the environment, and we came up with a 27.5%, our first line of calculation was to replace 35% of our diesel fleet. So our sole focus was on the Class 8 tractors. But as we progress, as the technology mature, we also see opportunity on the straight truck, the trailers. The trailers is something that, a couple of years ago, it wasn't a discussion, but now we see additional movement into the trailer space. So we can build a portfolio of different technology, whether, we use Class 8 tractors, we use straight truck, and we're also looking at hydrogen. The next mix into that is, renewable diesel. So we can have a mix of various technology, various emission reduction initiative to keep our targets and achieve our goal. So we are not solely focusing on just EV. I think EV is the first part right now because it is what is available. We can get trucks and our routes. So Cisco, 90% of what we do are local delivery. So we have short range, 60 miles, 80 miles, 100 miles round trip. So EV are adequate and, give us that opportunity to use the best asset on those routes. But we haven't excluded other technology. So we're looking at everything possible, everything available in the market that justify the investment and achieve our end goals. So whether, as I mentioned, electric vehicle, we're looking at renewable diesel, we're doing electric trailer, and we're also looking at hydrogen as a future. So where will we need help, especially on the hydrogen space, is the fueling, right? So as we all know, there is a limited availability on refueling station for hydrogen, and the cost of hydrogen is still to the point where it doesn't make any investment sense. So when we run our calculation financial planning, hydrogen wasn't the best financial available technology. That's why we shifted to electrification. But that's really where we would need public support. How can we get help on charging infrastructure? How can we help? Can we get help on fueling for hydrogen? How can we get help for incentives? You know, whether there are incentives to subsidize the cost of the electric vehicle, incentive for the charging equipment, but more importantly, support with the utility. As my colleague Salem mentioned, it takes a long time to have power to the sites for the charging equipment. So if we can help that, that would give us, you know, a boost to achieve our goal.
Thanks, Stefan. Are there any questions? There we go. Margaret Clark, and then we'll go to.
I don't know if this is going to work. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I am just freaking out. Okay. I have been on my city council in Rosemead for 32 years and on many environmental committees at the federal, state, local. Common sense environmental. The biggest I told you so of my life was when CARB in the early 90s wanted to make clean burning fuel. So they mandated MTBE for the gasoline, methyl tertiary butyl ether. And I helped form the San Gabriel Basin Water Quality Authority for the groundwater cleanup. So I was working with water people, and they said the characteristics of MTBE, I think it moved faster than water or something, it's going to get into the groundwater. So the League of Cities had us meet with the guy from CARB. And I said, this is going to get in the groundwater. Oh, no, we're just going to double line all the storage tanks, the gasoline tanks that were leaking. I was on a committee called LUST, at leaking underground storage tank. Yeah. And if you have a issue big enough for a committee, it's a big issue. Okay. And then he said, we're going to shore up all the pipelines. Okay. Within very short time, virtually all of Santa Monica's water wells had to be shut down because the MTBE got into it. And if you Google it today, $29 billion to clean it up. That's money that could have helped the environment in other ways. So when you said CARB, it's a red flag for me. I'm sorry, but I'm thankful to God that I have low blood pressure. So this is crazy. Why aren't people paying attention to it? We're going to have another problem like that. Anyway, I'll shut up. But can we invest in renewable natural gas as long as it's clean? And like you said, hydrogen. Aren't there other ways to do it? Do we have to go electric? Because they're trying to make us all buildings electric. We don't even have enough to, remember it last year, 104 degrees, don't charge your EV from 4 to 9. We don't have enough electricity now. How on earth are we ever going to have enough for this? Thank you.
Well, I certainly appreciate your comments. And on the rail side, I can tell you that we are investing in Tier 4 locomotives, which is the cleanest burning locomotive currently available. And we're currently testing renewable fuels from Barstow into the basin. So we're seeing that as really promising and seeing some significant reductions in emissions. We're also going to be testing a hydrogen fuel cell locomotive in the next year or two, depending on how that technology comes along. But we are definitely committed to testing new technologies to reduce emissions. It's something that's important for us. We know it's important for our communities, and we're doing everything we can to address that issue and do our part to reduce emissions. It just has to be done in a reasonable way and in really coming together and all of us talking about what's the best way to do that instead of constantly at odds. I think we can achieve some great things if we can all just come to the table and have that discussion.
All right, Member Rhodes, and then Supervisor Spiegel. Oh, okay, and we'll come to Mr. Ortiz as well.
Thank the panel for this discussion, and maybe to Ms. Clark's point, the unintended consequences of massive infrastructure change like this. One of the things that's coming to my mind is when we were just talking about a electric passenger car, there's a increased weight, which people are predicting is going to have an increased wear and tear on the roads. I got to imagine with replacing diesel trucks with electric trucks, that is a similar concern, that it be increased weight. But But I'm curious, does an increased weight of locomotive require infrastructure changes on rail?
Yes, so we tested the first over-the-road battery locomotive between Stockton and Barstow. Unfortunately, that battery was not big enough to get it all the way there, and it had to be sandwiched between two diesel locomotives. But it was a step in the right direction to start testing the technology. What we've learned is we are going to need a bigger, heavier battery. And what is not clear yet is how that's going to impact our rail network over our bridges. The impact to the current infrastructure. So we can't test it yet because it's not yet available, but we do anticipate that it is going to be significantly heavier and potentially cause some damage to our infrastructure.
Verizon.
Yes, and I think Mr. Larry McCallan is where Art Brown, we all sit on Metrolink, and it took us the longest time to get Metrolink over to Tier 4. And we were the first ones out the gate, first ones in the country to move to Tier 4. And it was just this past year, we finally got our last car, wasn't it? Oh, we haven't gotten our last ones. Okay. And that was 15 years ago we started. So it tells you, and we're now getting notified we have to start looking at electric. And it's like, are you kidding? We don't even have the fulfillment of our order from Tier 4, which you were talking about the long time that it takes to process this. I'm sorry I applauded about the electric, but we got the desert, and anybody else that's got desert, and the cutting the times, and we have projects now stopped in Riverside County because Edison cannot say that they can meet the needs of our projects. And yet, this is not even with all the demands by 2030. I just am having a very difficult time comprehending. So I support whatever needs to happen because it's unrealistic. Even if you set aside $800 million, you still can't make it happen.
Right, that's correct.
We'll go to Mr. Ortiz and then Mr. Manos.
Thank you. I think when you guys mentioned a lot of the issues with the electrical side of it, it makes me think more and more about hydrogen, right? Because one, the weight of the battery that keeps slowing things down. We saw that with Sunline Transit Agency down in the Coachella Valley, that they started using hydrogen because of that issue. So hydrogen was used there to reduce the weight and be able to travel those far distances without needing to recharge. The charging times, as you mentioned, now you would need 2 locomotives instead of 1 because of the charging times, right? So hydrogen would be able to fuel faster and you wouldn't need those extra vehicles. The electrical infrastructure that you mentioned as well, right? Adding all that infrastructure for every station around, and that makes me think more, does it make more sense to make investments in hydrogen production instead of going through fixing all those logistical routes and needed infrastructure? Is it going to make more sense? And just wanted to ask, what issues do you guys see in that comparison now? Because I know it changes every year, right? Batteries are getting lighter. You are seeing more heavy duty trucks able to make it further distances, but do you see hydrogen still ahead in some senses, or what's the current state of that?
Salim, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I did take a first crack at that. So hydrogen, when you look at the way that it's manufactured, existing ways is through steam methane reforming, and there's nothing clean about that. So if you want to create truly green hydrogen, you go through electrolysis. Electrolysis, you could do it 2 ways. You can plug it into utility power. You can go and create a microgrid to create. So either way, to create green hydrogen, you still need a good amount of power. So then it comes down to the efficiency. Is it better to, take 5 megawatts and go and put it into an electrolyzer to get hydrogen?
Just to be clear, that's what Sunline is doing. They have electrolysis right now.
They have electrolysis, they have some solar power, but they're still connected to the grid, right?
Grid, yeah.
And we know that the efficiency isn't the same, right?
Correct.
Yeah. With electric versus hydrogen, but is that the only issue right now? Because if it's just efficiency versus all these other issues, it still seems like there is that opportunity.
It's more than just efficiency. So we actually, before going to WADIV to its current business model, we started at looking at that, just creating green hydrogen, because at that point we thought that, you had the faster fuel times, the reduced weight and so forth. But when you do create the green hydrogen, now it comes down to the cost of transporting it. And that becomes extremely costly. So you have to actually liquefy it so that you get a higher density, and moving that around is extremely expensive. Storing it also, I mean, hydrogen is naturally a corrosive material. So eventually you'll have to replace all of those tanks. Eventually they will corrode. Now, when you start looking, at the comparisons of hydrogen to electric, in terms of the fueling time, with megawatt charging, you could bring that fueling time down. Again, with higher density batteries, you can increase the range of these trucks. So from that standpoint, we thought that, okay, long-term, the best idea is to start pushing manufacturers to go in that direction. And as, the technology advances, the cost will come down. But if you look at the current trucks that are out, yes, it does have a good amount of constraints compared to a diesel truck. And it's not suitable for long haul freight. The ideal use case for those is going to be, drayage and middle mile. And then as you start seeing the faster technology, the faster charging, you could start going to more of that long haul freight.
Okay, and then what about the sustainability of the vehicle itself? Because we know right now with like lithium, right, it's very detrimental to the environment. Is there a lot less lithium or those kind of materials used in the hydrogen vehicles?
Yeah, so typically you still have a battery in a hydrogen truck. It's going to be significantly smaller than what you see in a truly zero emissions truck, but that battery is still there, and that's used as a battery buffer for the hydrogen. So it's basically charging up a battery, and then that battery is going through a motor powered vehicle.
But it's still a much smaller.
It's a smaller battery, but there still is a battery there.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Now, so as this trends, so yeah, I was wondering how this would come down the pike to you in the short line. At what point?
So in 40 years, we can have that conversation again. But one thing to consider too, right, for railroads is that a BNSF locomotive could be in Nashville, Tennessee tomorrow. It could be in Florida. It could be in New York. It's an interconnected system, which is why Congress maintains its purview over railroads. It's an interconnected interstate commerce. And why that matters is, yes, there's California infrastructure you would have to build for a hydrogen locomotive, for example, or an electric locomotive. But then you also need to build it in Arizona, and then you need to build it in New Mexico, and then you need to build it in Texas or wherever that locomotive is going. It has to be able to be seamless. And one of the challenges so far, anyway, with battery technology from a railroad perspective is that charging time. For example, the San Diego Imperial Valley, a short line railroad we operate at night. We move freight between San Diego and Tijuana. And during the day, it's the San Diego trolley system. If we miss a window or if our locomotive runs out of battery, now we're blocking the entire trolley system on that rail line. So we have to have 100% dependability on a technology. I will say that Genesee and Wyoming is partnering with a company headquartered in Los Angeles called Parallel Systems. They're developing a battery electric rail car mover. It's not a locomotive. It's an autonomous vehicle, and it's meant to really compete at a market that's dominated by truck, and that's that drayage market. It's that less than 500 miles where it's not meant to replace traditional rail service, but it's meant to, I have a container I want to ship 40 miles, hit a few buttons on a laptop, and it will go there safely. We're in the development phase in a pilot project doing that now. But to your earlier question, the battery chemistry can be different because it can be heavier. You don't have the same concerns about, the weight of the vehicle on the track. So I do think that there will be opportunities for hydrogen in the future. One of Lena's colleagues mentioned to me once that what a locomotive is, I think 5,000 gallons of diesel fuel in it. That's equivalent to like 100 megawatt hour battery. And what's on the market now, you could buy like a 3 megawatt hour battery locomotive for $10 million. So it's probably going to be hydrogen from a long haul perspective, is my guess.
And I would just say on the long haul perspective, a hydrogen locomotive requires tenders to move the hydrogen behind it. So you need more than one tender, and operationally we're not set up yet to do that, but we're certainly going to test it and look at it. Also know that green hydrogen is extremely expensive. If you compare it to diesel fuel right now, it could be about $15 to $18 a gallon, which if people are panicking about $6 to $7 a gallon, imagine $18 a gallon, and some are saying as high as $30 a gallon. But hopefully in time, if it is proven technology, it's like that TV and it eventually comes down.
Yeah, I want to transition to workforce real quickly, but before we do that, Member Manos has a question.
Just kind of spraying to all fields real quick, because this does seem to be the hyper focus on electrifying in order to go ahead and meet certain targets. But I wanted to know, in terms of public safety, train derailments, accidents, things of that nature, the weight of trains as they collide with things that might be on the track or may go off track, and there's mass and certain forces that are applicable when you start talking about heavier vehicles, even if they are on rail tracks. Fire during accidents, we've seen some of the cars catch fire. It's a very spectacular thing. I can only imagine what that would look like with the train. Has that been tested? And then operating in cold weather, and then longevity and costs associated with replacing batteries in terms of, what's the lifespan and how does that work out in terms of your calculation? So 3 kind of very different questions.
Well, so far, we've only been able to test. What's that?
Real quick.
We've only been able to test the battery electric locomotive between Stockton and Barstow. So we have not been able to get our hands on one to really test in all of those different scenarios. And certainly it's going to be a challenge to move that across the entire network, given charging capabilities. And so, but certainly safety is paramount to us. And everything we do revolves around safety for that of our communities and our employees and for the items that we ship as well.
Thank you. I don't see any hands online. There's member McCollum in here, but I'm looking online. I don't see any. Okay. Larry.
Thank you very much. As chair of Metrolink, I wanted to say that we were able to, in the in-use locomotive rule, we were able to get changes in there for passenger rail, commuter rail in California that we could live with. I understand your concern about the rest of that rule, and if we didn't get the changes we needed, we would be out of business totally, because our member agencies could not afford to put in the monies required for that. But fortunately, we were able to get into the in-use rule something for passenger rail, regional rail. Also, I just wanted to say we have 40 Tier 4 engines in use right now. We have money. We have Carl Moyer grants for more engines. We're trying to get matching funds for that. We're also using renewable diesel, which works wonderfully in those Tier 4 engines. But one of the things that I think probably Comey is going to get into, but we haven't really talked about, is the training for people to maintain all of this new technology. Yeah. And that could be the long pole in this tent.
Great segue, sir. Thank you. Because I think generally we're talking about, there's alignment amongst at least my panel members that I hear, that we're all committed to making sure that we have a cleaner system and cleaner operations, whether it's on the Cisco side or on the Class 1 railroad and the short line, and even on and of course the work that Salomon, what EV is doing is exactly that, is to get us to a cleaner system. It seems like what we're talking about then is maybe a different timeline of how we get to that cleaner system, and still be open to be a little bit agnostic about a technology that gets us there, but a little bit more time. As we think about that transition time, and I think Larry sort of teed this up, what kind of workforce implications do we see in this? Because there is a new economy that's coming with this, and it's hard for me right now to imagine what kind of job opportunities are going to show up on the railroad side. I see a new industry springing up that Salomon's working on, and we'll let him talk about that. But I want to start with Stefan and ask, what are the workforce implications to you as you transition to this new technology and new motive powers for moving your products?
Yeah, sure. So, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, before we started this electrification journey, we were all diesel. All our assets were running on diesel. So our workforce internally, because we do our on-site maintenance, we have mechanics on site. They were mechanics. They can fix engine, transmission, exhaust system, and so on. But now that we transit to electrification, it's a new skill set required. So we need to hire people with electric experience or electrical engineering experience. You need to have different type of maintenance associate technicians that can deal with high voltage power, electrification, and so on. So we have to go through that change and training on site. But what we see that is a challenge is on the service side. When something actually breaks, it takes longer to fix. We rely on OEM to get parts. Lead time are not usually the best you would see in the industry. So that is going to be the challenge. But where we see a fundamental change is all in the service and maintenance, whether we see that on the truck side, vehicle side, or the charging infrastructure side, because they're going to break. All this equipment, charging equipment, they need to be serviced, they need to be maintained. And then we need a different types of technicians to be available on site. So that's how we see the shift. And we have taken proactive measure to train our associate to sign partnership with organization to support that maintenance and service.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back here and real quickly, 1 minute, give me a sense of what the workforce implications are for your respective environments that you operate in.
Okay, so with Barstow, that facility is intended to create about 20 to 20,000 jobs, indirect and direct. So it's extremely important that we start preparing that workforce. We have already committed to doing zero emission electric hustlers in that facility, hybrid cranes. So we know that there's going to be a need for our workforce to know how to work on that type of equipment. So we've started to partner with some of the colleges and as low as into the high schools to start talking about how do we get people ready for those jobs that are to come. Maybe I'm aging myself. I'm still a believer that we need to start in the high schools and start bringing back some of those classes that we used to have. I mean, back in my day, it was shop. That's right, wood and machine. But we already have reached out to the high schools to start preparing some of those kids for those future jobs as well as the college.
Geez, I'll have to accuse my colleagues here of stealing my notes before the before the question, but I think Stefan really hit on exactly the same things, concerns that we have. I mean, we're training a lot of these folks in-house. It is difficult to hire people to work at railroads right now. It's outside work. It's 24/7. You're on call. You're working holidays. It's all day, every day. And so we end up training a lot of these folks in-house. We may bring them off the street with no experience working as, say, an electrician on a locomotive or a diesel mechanic. Where now we're going to transition those folks to working on even more high efficiency diesel locomotives and now on electric or hydrogen locomotives in the future. So we're really relying now internally on our OEMs, the manufacturers of locomotives, to help us teach our folks these new skills, because quite frankly, they're not taught at the community college level. They're much too advanced, requires a lot of advanced knowledge for these employees to work on it. And so I think they're partnerships really with the OEMs. They have a vested interest in selling us a product, but we need to be able to continue to operate it and maintain it.
So bring us home. You're ventured into this. Into this space and anticipating that this is going to be a growth opportunity. What kind of work potential?
Absolutely. I mean, there's 400,000 trucks that are sold every year, and those are all diesel trucks, and eventually we want to convert all of those to electric. Just going through our sites, though, I mean, at a minimum, each of our sites would have 2 to 3 staff members there. That's just for operations standpoint. We're also trying to bring in younger drivers to the transportation industry. I mean, that's been a huge issue, is the lack of driver workforce right now, and finding ways to bring in new talent. And electric is sexier than diesel. We've talked to a lot of the drivers. They absolutely love them. It's faster, it's instant acceleration, less vibrations on the body, easier to drive. And you compare a Nikola to an existing diesel, and they love that truck. The other side of the coin is the infrastructure. We were awarded a CC R&D grant for developing that 3rd generation product, and that is going to be a product that's completely built in America. We hope to have a warehouse here to do the full manufacturing of that, and that's going to employ several hundred jobs, from engineering to R&D development, maintenance staff, and so forth. So there's a huge amount of growth potential that we see here.
Well, again, I want to thank my panel for this thought-provoking conversation. I want to note that this is not a typical freight conversation that you would have heard in the past. And it just goes to show the multifaceted nature of this industry that we call supply chain or goods movement. It has so many aspects to it and has also so many potentials to it. My expectation is, as at SCAG, we've committed to get involved with the comprehensive goods movement plan. This will probably entail a lot of the things that you've heard here and many more things to show the complexity of this big industry that's vital to our region, but also vital to not just the economy, but also to the social aspects of life in our region. And so as we think about this, the issues of regulation come into play. Of course, the issue of the environment come into play, and how do we balance these things as we go forward? I think really is a test of the future in front of us. So again, help me thank my panel for the conversation, and thanks, Stefan, for joining us. So,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President, it's back to you.
We will now receive reports from the business representative, the president, and the executive director. Before we begin, do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on those three items?
No raised hands, Mr.
No
President.
raised hand. I'll call on Lucy Dunn, Regional Council Member, for her business representative report. You're muted, Lucy.
Okay,
There
yes.
you go.
Thank you, Mr. President, and again, happy birthday. Lucy Dunn here in the beautiful city of Mission Viejo. I wanted to first begin my report, which, by the way, it's the last couple of pages of the agenda for those looking for it. First, I want to just express my personal thanks to Dr. Gigi Moreno for her last day, I think is today at SCAG, and thank her for all her good work. I've enjoyed working with her from the business perspective. And with all of this talk in our last presentation about goods movement and energy, the fact that we now have her at the California Energy Commission, I think is a bonus. So I think we should maintain good connections and stay with her. Second, the Glue Council will be next meeting in April, where all the good work with today's joint policy committees. The Glue Council will also consider a recommendation for support of the Connect SoCal. So for new members of the Regional Council, Glue Council stands for Global Land Use and Economics Committee of SCAG, and it basically is comprised of the business representatives of SCAG. And so delighted to be able to consider that and continue our chats in that regard. Most of the information is, I would just leave to you to note in my business report in writing. In particular, I found it fascinating that California last year, with a population of 35 million, issued 110,000 building permits and housing is such a critical issue for business. And yet the state of North Carolina, with a population of 11 million, issued 98,000 building permits. So if there's something about policy in California, those numbers, those performance metrics just hit it home for me. The last thing I just want to note, apparently there's a little paragraph that's missing out of my report, and somehow I didn't catch it, but I wanted regional council members and SCAG leadership to know that the climate change reporting information in the state of California is being challenged by national and regional business groups. US Chamber, California Chamber, American Farm Bureau, BizFed LA, and BizFed Central Valley have all filed a lawsuit against the California Air Resources Board, CARB, challenging the climate accountability package. And I'll provide some information and links to that for anyone interested, but just know that that's a really troubling measure for them, as the new laws compel speech, among other issues, in violation of the First Amendment, say these business leaders. So I note that the California laws go beyond what the federal government's proposed climate disclosure rules. So there'll be interesting tension there. But with that, Mr. President, I wish you a very happy birthday. And I know this has been a long day and long meetings, so I will just end it there for you.
Thank you very much. The 2024 Regional Conference and General Assembly registration is now open. Registration opened last week for SCAG's 59th Annual Regional Conference and General Assembly at the JW Marriott Desert Springs Resort and Spa in Palm Springs on May 2nd and 3rd. This event brings together leaders from across California to collaborate on future of mobility, communities, the environment, and the economy. Early bird registration ends March 29th. For additional details about the event, please visit scag.ca.gov/GA 2024. The 2024 scholarship program is now open for applications through March 22nd. Up to 9 $4,000 scholarships are available for high school or community college students from the SCAG region interested in pursuing planning or public service related careers. More information is available on the SCAG website. Last week, I led a mobile workshop for Regional Council and Policy Committee members in San Bernardino County. Our first stop was a tour of the ESRI headquarters in the city of Redlands, where we met the CEO and founder, Jack Dangerbond. ESRI is a global market leader in geographic information systems, mapping technology, and has been a partner to SCAG over the past several years. We also received a presentation from Metrolink and the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority on the new Metrolink Aero service. Thanks to all of you who joined me, and I hope the trip was informative. Our next regional council meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 4th, 2024 at 12 p.m. Now I'll call on Comey for the executive director's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Real quickly, a couple of things. One is to just bring to your attention what's been going on between the AQMD and the EPA. The AQMD was required to file a contingency mitigation plan that was due for action by the EPA in July 1st of this year. This plan covers Orange County, Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. On the 2nd of February, the EPA published a notice of proposed disapproval of that plan, which means that it would set in motion a 24-month highway sanction clock until the AQMD can address the underlying issues in the plan. Now, that's where we get implicated, because that means you couldn't have federal actions taken or approvals or funding to projects in our region as a result of that highway sanctions clock that would take 24 months. At the end of the 24 months, those approvals will go quiet on us. And so it would have some really negative impact and consequences on our region. We since asked for an extension of the comment period on the EPA's action. That comment period was extended by a month. Comments were due on March 4th, but now it's been extended to April 3rd. So we appreciate the responsiveness on that ground. We've been working with our county transportation commissions to prepare a letter that would hopefully highlight some of the significant implications of this disapproval of the air plan. And so we're hoping to compel the EPA to either approve the plan or at least conditionally approve it until meaningful partnerships can be set up to fix the things that needs to be fixed And so those conversations are going on, but I just want to bring this to your attention that we have a looming issue around us that may come back to you in some more urgent manner if not resolved. So we continue to evaluate what the potential impacts will be, and we'll provide updates as they become available over time. You have heard us talk about the governor's budget that was announced on January 16 about the cuts, the $300 million cut to the Regional Early Action Planning Program, REAP 2.0. This will result in approximately $123 million cut in the SCAG REAP program if it becomes budget law. SCAG has issued a hold on sub-allocations right now because we just don't know where this is going to land, and we just don't want to be at a point where we spend monies we don't have. And so we expect to come back to the EAC in April to discuss some priorities and some principles of how we might reshape the program if in fact this is where the program lands, where we have $123 million cut. And as you heard from the CFO, we will then be compelled to come back to the Regional Council with proposals on how we adjust the budget to recognize those cuts that may be affected as a result. So we'll continue to, in the meantime, we'll continue to work with our stakeholders and friends to advocate on behalf of the program, such that if not restored in this fiscal year, in this coming fiscal year, that maybe it's restored over time. So that's an advocacy priority for us as the budget process moves forward in Sacramento. Lastly, I appreciate Lucy Dunn talking about Dr. Gigi Moreno. I want to take a moment to note that she indeed will be leaving us to go work at the Energy Commission. I think it's an opportunity of a lifetime, and we do wish Dr. Moreno well. Gigi has been a great addition to our team and really elevated our game. And we wish her well. We'll miss her. With that, Mr. President, I will be glad to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, any future agenda items? Any announcements? Let's call on Jan Harnick for an addition to the adjournment.
Thank you. I would like to adjourn this meeting today in honor and memory of Brian Nestandi. He was a longtime friend of Riverside County. He served in the assembly for district, or not sure the district, but he was a seatmate of Supervisor Hagman. And unfortunately, we found out he passed away yesterday. His wife is a colleague of mine and Kathleen Kelly's on the Palm Desert City Council. And he gave a lot to the valley. He was a relatively young man. So I do want to, if you'd be so kind to indulge me to adjourn this meeting in his name.
Okay, we will also conclude this meeting with a special tribute to SCAG Senior Regional Planner John Ascension. He passed away last week after a long and heroic battle with cancer. John served the agency for more than 17 years and was a beloved member of the SCAG family. Our hearts go out to his family and colleagues at this difficult time. As we adjourn, we'll take a moment of silence to remember John and Brian and send our regards to those who knew and loved him. Thank you, and now this meeting is adjourned.
Yes, it's a late time.